we spend our whole entire lives working towards the next thing. Everything about early life is about working toward the next thing. I feel like I'm resting up for the next big phase of my life, when the reality is that maybe this is just my life now. Like maybe this slower pace and this like backing away from social events, and like where I used to just be all in, right? And I would host the parties and I'd have all people in my life all the time. And now I don't want people. I don't want people. And I don't feel like I'm depressed or withdrawn. I just really, really like the quiet. I just like really like it. And maybe you're not there yet because your kid is far more active out in the world.
This is something that I think about quite frequently because I did that in my professional life where I chased the next degree and then the next title and the next title. And as soon as I got the next title, I needed the next title until I became a VP, which is, that's pretty much where I wanted to get. And the step above that is requiring a lot of personal sacrifice that I wasn't willing to make, family time, things like that. And so I went from a VP and I took a step down for the next job. And it was the happiest transition. I was quite content being exactly where I was in that moment. I was no longer sort of chasing this next thing, and I wasn't working so hard to try to prove myself because it was a step down from what I had done, and I knew that I had succeeded at that other level. So I think it's important to distinguish if we're chasing something in our life that's tangible, something we can get, versus that ability to continually grow. And I know we've talked about this before because it came up this morning in conversation with a friend of mine, that it's not about continual growth like a linear, here I am today, and tomorrow I'm going to be better, the next day I'm going to be better, the next day I'm going to be better. It's not like that. It's that we take these periods of growth followed by periods of rest and preparation for the next growth. Because whether we're preparing for that next growth or not, or anticipating that next growth or not, it's going to come. So what I was telling my friend this morning was, yes, it's not a linear growth that life is, but just the fact of doing this podcast has given me so much personal growth. Even though I talk to you every day anyway, just doing the podcast and thinking about it and being thoughtful and intentional about what we talk about has made me grow so much. So whether I'm enjoying that or wanted it or prepared for it, that's what's happening. I am not growing my career so much right now. I've got the title I want, I've got my company that I have, and I'm very content with that. So I'm not discontent with my life right now, but the growth is going to continue, whether it's something I prepared for or not.
I love that idea, especially when you talk about that the thing that we might be chasing, for lack of a better term, is growth. And I think you're right. I do not want to ever stop growing. I always want to be moving forward, even though, like you said, it's cyclical and there are times of rest. But I do always want to be learning and growing and just taking in more of life than I have. I like experiencing new things. And at the same time, I think you're right that I no longer have a drive to pursue a career aside from the podcast, which I love. And if this blew up, I would be so thrilled, because this is, like you said, this is growth. This is for me. It's growth in that you and I are connecting on deeper levels. And it's also making me think about things that I haven't thought about in a long time, or maybe have never thought about. You and I were just talking earlier about that. One of the things that I was wondering in a previous podcast was, what is really my authentic voice? And what is vibes that I put on to match the energy and vibe of the people around me? And that is a question that I haven't answered that question yet. I still don't really for sure know which voice that comes out of me is my true, most authentic voice. So that's growth that I'm coming around to, and a lot of that has to do with the podcast. Part of the reason that I grow is because we're doing the podcast, and because I'm talking with the one and only person in my entire life that I have to Google words when we have conversations. And I love that so much. That just makes me so happy.
I think there's something struck me as you're saying that about the words that I use. Two people in my life. One of them was my graduate advisor, and I know if anyone has a graduate degree, the graduate advisor is an extremely influential person in one's life, for better or worse. They're very influential in your life. And he would say, take a sentence, use words that we use commonly in everyday world, create a sentence, like if I'm publishing a paper, take out one word at a time until the sentence falls apart, and then put that one word back. So he was very much about simple construction, not using any words. In one of the sentences that I was going to publish, I wrote aspect. And he said, what's an aspect? Tell me what an aspect is. And to this day, I can't use that word aspect because there are 10 other words it could mean that are more accurate to what I'm trying to say. So I've been highly influenced by him to be very careful about the words that I use and to not just throw around words that sound better, but that it's the actual word that I want to say. I also had someone that I dated a long, long, long time ago who told me oftentimes he would point out that the word that I chose for one particular meaning or one statement that I was trying to make wasn't the word that anyone else in the world would have used. And it's correct, but he would always be like, but why that word? And my answer was always, because that's what I meant. That's the word that I meant. So I wrote a sentence once for an application somewhere. It's medicine is like the vinculum binding the earth and the egg, right? So vinculum, I know, vinculum is this sideways tissue around your wrist, under your skin, of course, and that just holds your wrist stuff in your body, right? And so I was trying to explain the connection. I was studying fertility at the time, so I spent a lot of my days looking in the microscope at eggs, at animal eggs, like mammal eggs, right? So I was trying to say that the world is so connected to my work because of this vinculum, right? So it's a very odd sentence, but it's exactly what I meant in that moment, that I spent my days looking at eggs, and I spent my nights thinking about how I can affect the world, and bringing that all together was this great solid tissue, and no one else would have written a sentence like that. So I will embrace the fact that sometimes I use words that no one else would have chosen, but it's exactly what I mean.
And I love being around people where I can do the same thing, where I can use exactly the word that I'm looking for, which is, and I notice this a lot because I edit our
Yes.
podcasts.
Yes.
But there are a lot of times when I'm fishing for the word because there is a specific word in there. And I think my age just means that it's harder to come by. But there's almost always a particular word that is exactly what I mean. And I could come up with like the adjacent word, but that's not what I want to do. And I do the same thing because I'm a writer. And I learned as a writer to be concise, because no one wants to read something that's blah, 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 on and on and on. Like, you want to get to the point. A crisp sentence is far more impactful. So I love that I can just say what I want to say with you, because I don't have to try to find the right word, and then also do the extra work of making sure that it's a word that's common enough that the people around me are going to be able to follow what I'm saying.
Here's one of the reasons that's so important that we can talk to each other with the words that we mean, because so much of interpersonal issues come from communication problems. So people might be, here's my interpretation of this word, here's your interpretation of that word, but I'm going to stick to mine, and I know that you're arguing that you're arguing your point based on your interpretation of that word. And I mean, not you, but when people get together, and they're not willing to say, okay, I'm going to look at how that other person that I'm communicating with looks at that word. They refuse to do that. And I think so many problems arise from that, the semantics of what they're trying to tell each other.
The thing that's really been weighing on me, and not in a bad way, but it's been a thought that's been rolling around in my head, is if this is what life is going to be for me, first of all, am I cool with that? And the answer is like, yes, I love my life right now, like so much. And then the second one is that going to be enough? And then my question is, like, for who? Because I love this life. And when I get to have multiple days in a row where I don't have to go out, and I don't have to see people, and I don't have to have deep conversations, and like build up, because it's, even though I love the conversations, it's a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy for me to build up to these deep conversations, and the way that I'm portraying it. And my whole life I was getting messages that a quiet life is not a life to chase. Like the life you chase is exciting and active and new and fresh, and I really really like my quiet life right now. Like, I really like my quiet life. And if I could just do this for a good long while, who am I trying to impress? Or is it just a matter of money? Like, can I do this forever? Can I sustain this lifestyle forever? That's like a whole nother question.
So the last thing you said, that's a tomorrow problem. I wouldn't worry about that right now. I would argue, though, that you have worked really hard to set up a lifestyle that works for you, which is quieter, and you don't have to go out every day. You don't have to put on pantyhose and high heels, which is, I think every woman should aspire to that. But I would argue your life is not that quiet right now. You have a son with very special needs, and you are a caretaker to at least 3 people, if not 4 or 5. So your life is not that quiet. And I'm looking at it from my own perspective, and I don't want to project myself into your shoes, but I also like not having to go out every once in a while. And it doesn't happen in my life that often because you're right, I have a 12-year-old and we have lots of stuff to do outside the house. But I work from home as well. I love those big stretches of having nothing I have to do, but I also don't do as well during those stretches. I don't use the time as well, and I don't feel good afterwards. I want to get out. I want to have a thing that I can sort of build all my other tasks around, and I just don't do as well. So yes, it would be great to have nothing I ever have to do, but I know I wouldn't be happy. Me.
That's kind of exactly what my question is. Like, I know for most people, the kind of life that I'm describing doesn't sound fulfilling. And an earlier version of me also would have found it not that fulfilling. And the current version of me is not, I don't feel like something's missing when I have quiet. Like, I really like it. And it's vastly different. So there used to be times in my life when I would fall into really deep depressions and I would withdraw. And then I liked the quiet because I couldn't face anything else. This feels different from that. I still can face the times that are not quiet, but the times that are quiet don't feel like an escape or a withdrawal. They feel like just breathing.
As are most of the things we talk about in our podcast, this is a spectrum. And I think on one hand, where we were raised, you stay busy. You get your degree, you go into business, and then you raise your family on top of that, and you have a lot of kids, and you stay really busy. And then when they're gone, you have your hobbies, and you have your vocation, and you have your thing you're going to do when you're retired. But you have to stay busy. That's sort of the culture that we were raised in.
When we were little, we did have to stay busy. And I, in fact, the other day had a flash of that anxiety that I used to get when on a Saturday I just woke up and didn't have a thing I had to do. That used to be such an anxious time for me because I knew, and you knew too, that if we were caught doing nothing, we would be put to work to do something.
Right.
Because doing nothing was just not an option.
Not an option.
And so this last weekend, I had nothing on my calendar the whole weekend. And I thought about going out and doing some things. And then, gosh darn, Megan needed the car the whole day, both days, because she took up double shifts. And I was like, oh, bummer, I have to stay home.
But that's such a lovely thing. No, so when we were little, napping, reading a magazine, reading a book, taking a bath, that was not busy. That was a waste of time.
Yeah. So when I woke up on Saturday morning and realized I had the whole entire day, and I did do a lot of work, but I also knew that I could stop working. And a couple times I did just stop working and do other things. And it just felt so fulfilling in a way that quiet didn't when we were little. Quiet back then was anxiety. because it needed to be filled with something. Quiet now is just utterly lovely.
After
I
school.
and I'm not lonely.
No, that's
I'm not lonely
yeah.
when I'm alone, and I'm not a lonely person. Like I don't have this big strong desire to go fill my life with people. I would like to meet some new people because it's interesting, and the kind of growth that you and I were talking about earlier happens when you have new people. And also, I don't have to fill my time with new people.
I think it comes
Like the
down
new people
to
would be an addition to my life, not a have to.
right, just like a romantic partner, not a have to. I think it
That's
comes down to you and I both like who we are and can be alone with our thoughts, which I think is unfortunately kind of a rare thing.
yeah, and I think you're onto something there. I think that a lot of people want to be don't like the quiet because they don't like being alone with their own thoughts. And I've spent a lot of years training my mind not to spiral, not to spin out, not to ruminate. Oh my God, ruminating was such a problem for me when I was younger. So I've done a lot of that work so that when I'm alone with my thoughts now, I can just like dream and imagine and use my and have memories like the places that my brain takes me now when I'm having quiet alone time. It's vastly different and it's very peaceful and it's very grounded, and I couldn't say that 10 years ago.
So my confession, I don't know if it's a confession or just a realization or just putting the facts out there. I don't like quiet, like with nothing going on. Not because I don't like being alone with myself, because I think I'm great. I'm interesting. I have great thoughts. But there's just so many stressors in life right now, just based on where I am in my life, that those things pop up over and over again. So I have not yet trained myself not to spiral in these worries that I have. And honestly, I think these worries are going to last another 10 years or so. So we'll see what happens after that. But these are just things that come up in my life. And so I don't like being in the quiet, but I'm perfectly happy to be alone.
So let's talk about that, about the work that I've done. um some of it was therapy. Actually, probably most of it was therapy. But also a lot of it was work that I did getting sober. And a couple of the things that were really critical for me is first of all acceptance. Just learning to accept that some things are the way that they are. And I can spin my wheels and spin my wheels, and some things I have no power to change. So learning to accept things that I cannot change was huge. Another piece for me was recognizing the difference between the things that I can influence slash control and the things that I cannot or don't have. Like I can't control other people. And a lot of my early years spinning and ruminating was to try to figure out if I could find exactly the right combination of words to say in exactly the right way so that I could influence other people to do the things that I wanted other people to do. And it never worked. And it was just a miserable way of being. So when I finally let go of the idea that I had to change people, and not just change people, but when I let go of the idea that I could control everything if I just thought it through the enough, that just it just makes my life so much more peaceful and more grounded because there are things that I cannot change. So why spin my wheels trying to change it? Like, why am I going to pour my energy into trying to figure out a way to change something that I cannot change? I don't have the power to. So instead, I focus more of my energy on changing the things that I can change and enjoying the things that don't need to change.
So I have a slightly different take on that, or maybe I don't. Let's see where this goes. When we were little, we had a plaque hanging on the wall that was a prayer of some sort that said, Lord, help me accept the things I cannot change and change the things that I can change, and give me the wisdom to know the difference. Right? So I grew up with
Yeah.
that.
That literally, by the way, is the serenity prayer that AA teaches you. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
I think I was overly influenced that, and I didn't really get past the first phrase of grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, because I didn't feel very powerful as a little girl. I didn't even speak
Yeah.
very much. So I did not feel powerful to change anything. So I think I spent well into my adulthood thinking I just couldn't change stuff. And there was a business phrase that came up again and again, it is what it is. And to this day, I can't stand that phrase because, for example, let's say I'm working with the commercial department and the commercial department says, well, the sales are just down. It is what it is. Like, no, our job is to go change that, to go figure out what's going on and to go change. That's our job. Why else are we here? We're just going to accept what that fact is, or are we going to go change it? Because that's what we're here to do. We're here to help more patients in the pharmaceutical industry. But I think I might have taken that a little bit too far as well, because you're absolutely right. We can't change or control other people. We can't, not even our own children. We can influence, we can give them wisdom, but we cannot make other people behave a certain way. And I think you and I have both spent way too many years trying to figure out exactly the right thing to say to get that person to understand, because if they could understand what we're going through, then they would change their behavior. Not going to happen. So yes, I think that is on the bounds, again, the spectrum. That's on the bounds of we cannot change that. And I agree, we cannot change that, and no longer spinning my wheels trying to change other people or their behavior or their thoughts or make them understand something that they're never going to understand. I'm perfectly happy to let that go. But I also think that it's part of religion, patriarchy, politics to keep us obedient by telling us you can't control that. You can't control politics. You can't control international policy. So yes, I'm not making international policy right now, but I can protest and I can spend my money in certain ways. And I think we have a lot more power than we're being taught that we have. So I think there are some things we can put on the category of, yes, I can't change that and let that go. And some things we have to say, you know what, I probably could change that, even though I've accepted that most of my life. I can change that. And it's my job to go and try to do that in whatever way, whatever sphere of influence I've got. That's our job. So I don't like it is what it is. And I don't like trying to get people to understand me when they're never going to. So living somewhere in between that, it's what make me happy.
And that's the third part of this serenity prayer, is the wisdom to know the difference. And I think that's the part that so many of us miss, is that the wisdom to know the difference requires discernment. It requires us to do the hard work of thinking through, is this something I can control or change, or isn't it? And I think you're absolutely right. We as a society are conditioned to believe we're powerless
Yes.
to change systems.
Right.
And part of that discernment is recognizing that that is not true, that we actually are the only power that can change a system when we come together and focus that energy. Remember, there's a scene in Finding Nemo where all of the fish were about to get sucked up into the net, and Nemo tells them, swim down, swim down, swim down. And when they all focus their energy on swimming in the same direction, they actually freed themselves.
I completely agree. Right. And I think that's what a lot of movements today are based on. I would err on the side. Oh, and I think our ability to change the way that it is differs based on where we are in our life and what age we are, what wisdom we have, what leaders we follow, what money we have. I mean, those things change over time. So it's not like we can always say, like my 12-year-old son, he hates talking about politics because he can't vote and he can't protest because we don't live in the US. So there's not a whole lot he can do, right? And as he ages, I'm going to teach him there are not only things you can do, but things that you're responsible for doing. But these issues change over time. And I think our job is sort of push that boundary of what can I actually affect.
I agree with you. I've always been the kind of a person that wants to push that boundary of what I can change and what I can affect. And I think what I'm coming to right now is that it's probably okay if I take a little bit of time to not always be pushing on that boundary.
Yes.
At the place where I'm at right now, which is just like, and it's not that I'm doing nothing.
Of course not.
I'm doing a lot of behind the scenes activism. I just am not putting all of my energy into the success of that effort is going to determine how I feel about the effort that I'm putting in, because I can't control the outcome of it. I can only control the effort that I put in. And so as I'm doing the work, even though it seems excruciatingly slow sometimes, learning to just be okay with how long things can take is part of my being in a little bit of a quieter life, and this not chasing, because there's an aspect of chasing something that feels very exhausting. Like if you are chasing and running, you're gonna wear out, you're gonna burn out eventually. So instead of chasing a thing, now I don't know what would be a good word to describe it. I'm just doing
Enjoying
things
it.
now. I'm enjoying it. Yeah. I'm doing things that I think are going to make a change. And then I'm letting the outcome of those changes that I've made be out of my sight. Cause I can't control the outcome. I can only control the effort.
So I think this is huge growth, because in the 80s and 90s, work life was called the rat race. And this was inevitable. Nobody could be out of the rat race unless you were independently wealthy, which didn't happen as often as it does today. I take that back. Maybe it happens more often today, or back then. But everyone who was sort of middle ground had to go join the rat race. And you had to go, scurrying along these little corridors looking for whatever, you don't know what you're looking for, competing against other rats who are looking for the same thing that they don't know what they're looking for. So the fact that you were able to grow past that and create a life for yourself where you are functioning in a huge way, you're functioning a lot for a lot of people, you're keeping a lot of people very, very healthy and alive, and you're enjoying the quiet time in your life. This is a huge success. That's not glazing. Stop it.
No, no, I know. Thank you. The first time that I heard about the slow movement was when I was in ministry. And in ministry, we were constantly running. And right off the bat, the very first job in ministry I ever had, the people who I was working for, like before I even started on my first day, they said, "You do realize, don't you, that this is a 60-hour job? 60 at least a minimum of 60 hours a week job." And being young and having only worked for hourly up until then, I was like, "Yeah, but you're paying me for 40 and you want me to work 60." And they're like, "Yep, that's how this goes. You're a salaried position." And I just accepted it. Okay, I guess that's what we're going to do. And so part of the messaging was that there was always going to be more that we could be doing. And so if we had some downtime, like if there was a season where there was less activity, then we needed to fill it with something else. And it was during this time we would have annual gatherings of pastors, and to make it worth our while to come all the way from all over the state to gather, they would have speakers and events and those things. And one of the speakers was talking about the slow movement. She said that a slower, quieter life is healthier, and she laid out all of the ways that it's physically healthier, mentally healthier, emotionally healthier. And I just thought to myself, that is the stupidest fucking thing I have ever heard in my entire life. If you are liking the content, please like, subscribe, and comment. And if you're listening on an audio platform, please give us a 5-star rating. It really helps the algorithm. Thank you. And I just thought to myself, that is the stupidest fucking thing I have ever heard in my entire life. Because if you expect me to slow down, how in the hell am I going to get all the stuff done that I'm already not getting done running at full speed? And the point that she made that took me a lot of years to finally get was that I don't have to fill my life with all of those things. That it is perfectly okay to take some of those things off of my plate and not do them. And in ministry, we finally got to a place too where and I still have pastor colleagues who think this way, that if I don't do it, then it's not going to get done. Because if I don't do it, no one else is going to. And my response to that constantly is, then why does it need to get done at all? Or maybe it doesn't. Like if if it's not important enough for anybody else on the planet to spend time doing, then why do you feel like you have to do it? Like, if you just stopped doing that and it fell apart and nobody else picked it up, then maybe falling apart was probably the thing it needed. So now I get that. Like, now I understand that I don't have to always be filling every waking moment with stuff.
But if we're taught from a very early age that our value is directly tied to productivity, not the result of effort, but the effort itself, then we're going to be looking to fill our every second with effort, regardless of what that result is at the end of the day. I cannot tell you in my 25 years in corporate America, corporate Canada, how many minutes of the day were wasted on things that really didn't need to be done. I would say 3-4 hours every day, half of the day is wasted on things that really didn't need to happen.
Because you had to fill them. Because you were
them.
Getting paid for them, so you had to fill them.
And we had to work overtime. And if we're going to work overtime, we had to have been busy during the day.
So this is exactly one of the things that completely shifted it changed my entire life, was separating my value from my productivity. And in a capitalistic society, they are one and the same. You are valuable in as much as you can produce for the world. And I now have multiple people in my life who are not physically or cognitively capable of producing for the world, and at the same time are the most valuable people on the planet to me and other people as well. So why would I feel like I can't extend that same grace to myself? Just because I'm physically capable of producing doesn't mean that I am only valuable in as much as I can produce. Because if that was the case, then those other people would be also valueless. And they aren't. Those are valuable people. So maybe, just maybe, I'm just valuable because I am on the planet and I'm breathing and I exist here and I'm taking up space. Maybe my value is just in my being and not in my doing.
What if someone said, what if everybody on the planet adopted that I'm valuable just because I exist, and nobody actually did anything, and we weren't able to feed the populace and organize ourselves and keep ourselves safe?
No, that wouldn't happen though. That wouldn't happen because people find satisfaction in doing. That's a separate thing from being valuable because you produce.
Ooh, I like that a lot. Say that again.
People will continue to be productive because we find satisfaction in producing. That's a completely different thing from my value being because I produce.
When I was an undergrad, I took a psychology course. One of the assignments was we were sitting in a seminar room. So we're all sitting in a circle looking at each other, and they said, come up with a hypothesis, and the person next to you is going to say whether that's a valid hypothesis or not. And I think the assignment was to look at the validity of how it was constructed, not whether the hypothesis was true or not. But the person next to me, I came up with a hypothesis that said people would rather work than not work. And what I was really boiling it down to was, if there's a sandwich in front of me and I was hungry, I would rather reach out and take it and put it in my mouth than just sit there and expect someone to feed it to me. Like, I was looking at the very basic level. And this person next to me looked at that and said, no way people would work if they didn't have to work. And I think that was a reflection of the understanding of work as you go to the office in a tie or high heels and pantyhose, and you sit there and you get bored and you do terrible things to make someone else rich. Not terrible things. You do boring things to make someone else rich for 8 to 10 hours, and then you go home and do the same thing for your family. That's what they meant by work. What I mean is, exactly as you're saying, is that you'll find something, you'll gravitate toward that thing that you're good at and that makes you happy. And that's what you will give to the world because you want to, not because your value is tied to that. And that was my definition of work.
Yes, I think come right back to the conversation we had earlier about how important the definitions of our words are to what it is we're trying to say. And you're right. If you are talking about work as in go to the office, nobody wants to do that. No, no, nobody wants to get up every single day and have their entire waking hours dictated by somebody else. Nobody wants that. But if you're talking about the effort that you put in to produce something beautiful for the world, which could include food, it could include shelter, clothing, it could include art, music, it could include scientific discovery. When people are in the world doing that, that's a vastly different thing. That's work that is both critical to our survival, but also incredibly satisfying, partly because it's critical to our survival.
Let's talk about art because for a long time in my young 20s, I didn't understand art. I loved going to museums, but I never really wanted to study art. And I just thought, okay, that's a nice to have, right? And as I've grown older, I'd realized that art, music, all of those things are so critically important. I would argue as important as food because it adds to the human experience. And what are we here for if not to have a human experience? If all we're doing is staying alive by eating the food and drinking the water, what is that? What's the point of all of that? It's the other things, it's the relationships, it's the art, it's the looking at beautiful things, it's the listening to a stream burbling, that kind of thing. That's what makes it worthwhile to be here. So to me, I've grown to appreciate that art, music, etc., nature is that thing. The people who grow older and start looking at birds and writing down what birds they see, right? This is the
Yeah.
human experience that we're all here for.
There was a show that I used to watch called The Walking Dead. I think it might still be on.
Art.
I don't know. Yeah, in and of itself, it is a work of art. Anyway, it was a show about the zombie apocalypse, basically. And for the whole entire first season, everybody was just worried about surviving. They had to figure out how to live in a world where if a zombie bit you, you were going to die. How were you going to live in a world where you no longer could go to the grocery store to get your food? And so the whole entire first season was about surviving. And one night they were all sitting around a campfire, and one of the women started to sing. And it completely broke into the experience that the people were having in a vastly different way. And it was so haunting because it sent this really strong message that surviving is not enough. Like, yes, we have to figure out how to survive in this new world, but there's no point in surviving just for the sake of surviving. The whole point of surviving is so that we then can thrive. And the thriving is in the art, in the music, in the dancing, in the relationships that we have with other people. The things that make us thrive are the reason we work so hard to survive.
I know people, many, many people who would define thriving as working so hard that you can then hoard money. And what we're talking about is the human experience of thriving, having good relationships and appreciating nature, just as you say. So I think that our definition of thrive is also one of those that can be vastly different depending on your perspective.
I do not find the hoarding of resources to be thriving.
I agree with you completely, but so many of our society, so many people in our society believe that's true. And I think that's a problem.
It's an error.
It's an error in thinking, right? I also feel like thriving is not optional. I don't know that
Yeah.
humans as a species would fight this hard to stay on the earth if there wasn't something beyond just surviving.
Yeah, for sure.
Ooh,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the luxury of life is the opportunity to have those thriving experiences,
you remember
right?
the
Like it's luxury to be able to go to a show or a play or to have a musician play for you. I mean, those are luxuries that don't cost a lot of money in it. I mean, they do now because we're in a capitalistic society, blah, blah, blah. But the things that really are important in life do not cost a lot of money. Relationships, art, music, science, exploration, discovery, imagination. All of those things, none of the, just free. Free.
right available to any human.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the movie Castaway? I mean, we could talk about every single movie
Yeah.
has some sort of
Yeah.
aspect of this. I don't use that word. Has some sort of view on survival versus thriving. And in the movie Castaway, he took a long time, a year, 2 years, to learn how to survive on that island. And finally, he had to go find something else. But he knew from the very beginning that it wasn't going to be just about survival, because he saved that one FedEx package that he didn't open because he wanted to have that experience of bringing back that package to the owner.
Yeah.
So that was his reason to survive, was so he could thrive after.
I think that thriving as a human, the thing that we strive for is meaning, purpose, and belonging. I really think those are the core of everything beyond survival. We want to make meaning of things. What does this mean? Why do these things happen? We want to have a purpose. And like you just said, the reason that the castaway character made it was because he found his purpose, and his purpose was to deliver that one dang package. And that was one of the things that kept him going. And then belonging. Where do we belong? Who are our people? Where's my tribe? And I feel like those are the things that if we can find those things, that's when we find fulfillment in life. It's not going to be in the hoarding of wealth. It's not going to be in the producing so much that we run ourselves ragged. It's not going to be in getting to the end of the rat race and being like, yes, I did it. What did you do? I ran the race. Okay. To what end? But when we find those other things, I feel like that's when we stop surviving and move into thriving.
I don't know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, and we'll see where it goes. Are we missing an opportunity to be intentional about our belonging, our purpose? What was the third one?
Meaning, purpose, and
Our
belonging.
meaning, purpose, and belonging. Because I spend many, many years in corporate America, and I have done so many seminars and so many personality tests and all these things that we do as a company. We sit in a boardroom for weeks every year talking about what is our mission, what's our purpose. And we talk about what is purpose, value. I can't think to keep those three in my mind: purpose, belonging,
Purpose, belonging, and meaning.
and meaning. Okay, so the purpose, what are we doing as a company? Why do we exist as a company? We talk endlessly about that. And then the you just told me that.
Purpose, meaning, and belonging.
I feel like purpose and meaning are so similar, but okay.
They're not, though. Your purpose is what you are here for, and meaning is making sense of it all.
So in the corporate world, we talk a lot about purpose, which is our vision, our mission, whatever. And then we have our meaning. We talk a lot about the meaning of it. Who are we doing this for? What is the overall, who's the benefit for? And we always say it's for the patients in the pharmaceutical industry. I think that's not always true. It's usually for the pocketbooks of our people who are rich. Anyway, we spend a lot of time in the corporate boardrooms talking about those things. We also talk a lot about belonging. We have a whole HR department that tells us where we belong. What's your title? Where's your hierarchy? Who are you going to phone if you need something? Who's going to phone you if they need something? Who's in charge? What department are you in? What's your boundary from this other department? The belonging of it is such an intentional act. And I'm just wondering, in this moment, as we're talking about these three important things, the meaning, purpose, and belonging, do we ever really take an opportunity as humans to be intentional about our meaning, our purpose, and our belonging? I don't think that I have.
And I think that I have, and that's part of why I'm okay with the quiet and the silence and the slow. Because I have spent some time considering what's my value, where do I belong. And it's not that I have all of those things all worked out. It's not that I've found my people and I'm done looking for people, or I've found my purpose in life, because my purpose has shifted so many times over the course of my life. And some of that purpose seeking included finding out what my purpose wasn't. Like, for a long time, I thought that I was just put here to do this. And so I did this. And then at some point this stopped being fulfilling. And I had to find a new purpose. So yeah, I've spent a lot of time being really intentional about those things. Not that I've solved it, but I think that has been part of what has led me to this place of peace and groundedness, and not feeling like I have to chase, because I've been there, done that. I've done the chasing.
Let me take an opportunity to be intentional about my purpose. one of my purposes, and we can walk through this because you've done this hard work and I haven't really taken a lot of opportunities to do this. A case study. I love, love, love volunteering for baseball, our youth baseball. My son's a youth baseball player, and as he's grown, I've gone in different age levels of volunteering, but I love volunteering. I love watching the kids grow, and I love being able to be there and answer questions and make sure people have what they need. They've got their right color belt and things like that. I love that so much. I love the people. But lately, this is a busy time of year, and lately people have been just downright rude to me about, I ask a question of the main group, and this lady writes back and is like, "What? That's so stupid!" Like, just rude. And my first thought was, well, am I really that sensitive? And then I thought about it for a long time as I'm cleaning my basement. I thought, yeah, I am that sensitive. I'm volunteering. I don't want to be rude, to have someone rude to me. And it's happened a couple times. And I'm like, you know what? That's it. I'm not built for this. I don't want to volunteer for baseball, but I love it so much. So I think one of my purposes is to serve the baseball community and serve my son and his friends and the adults who also care about these kids. But I don't want to do it with rudeness.
Yeah, and I think that you are already on the path of separating out the purpose and the fulfillment in the work from the response that other people give to you, which you have no control over. And that is a whole separate thing from the thing that you love to do. And the fact that they're responding like dickheads has very little to do with how much you love the actual work of doing the volunteering. They happen to be overlapping right now in a few ways that makes it really unpleasant.
So I need to let go of other people's comments.
I mean, you could, you don't have to let go of those, but I think it would make the fulfillment of the part you do love more fulfilling if you separated the piece that you love from the part you can't control.
Because I was questioning, is it really my purpose? And I wasn't using that terminology, but over the weekend I was questioning, am I really in the right spot? Am I really supposed to be volunteering if it hurts my feeling? It wasn't even hurting my feelings. It was just not wanting to have people be rude to me.
It's the unpleasantness.
The unpleasantness.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit upset that I was questioning whether my purpose really is to help out because I love it so much.
Oh, so let me just be real clear about this. Other people's reactions to us, while we cannot control them, can be really, 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 really miserable experiences for us. So I'm not trying to discount that the fact that those people are making this really hard for you is a miserable experience. It just is.
I can't even explain why it hit me so hard. Because I think I have pretty thick skin. I'm in sales. I own my own company. I get rejection a lot. And I let it go and I go to the next person. I'm not embarrassed about that or shamed about that. But this one, it just got me the wrong way.
So sometimes when things hit me the wrong way like that, it's because I didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
And I do far better with my thick skin when I'm ready for anything. But when I make myself vulnerable into a particular area because I don't expect stuff to be coming at me sideways, and then it does hit me sideways, that's when it makes, that's bad.
Yeah, maybe that was it. I think I got it off my chest though. Thank you.
Okay, well, you're welcome. I also think that there's not a singular purpose.
No,
because obviously, if volunteering for baseball was your singular purpose, then we also wouldn't be podcasting, and you wouldn't be running your business, and you wouldn't be doing other parenting things.
No,
right?
That was a case study.
A case study in purpose. So, and I think that having multiple reasons for being is always going to be in motion.
For sure.
Some things are going to fall off and other things are going to come in. And I think maybe that's part of why this rat race idea is so distasteful to me, because we're sort of taught that is our one and only sole purpose for being.
Right.
And then when it falls apart on you, you lose everything. Like your entire world feels like it's coming out from beneath you when you've poured all of your energy into one single purpose. And when that purpose ultimately is to serve someone else and and not yourself or your own life or your own fulfillment.
And we pour
So I think,
everything into it because we were told to. We were taught to.
yeah. Yeah, we were taught to, and I think that's been part of what's been so lovely about aging is that I can reject that notion now. And when I was younger, I couldn't have even envisioned rejecting the notion because I thought that if I didn't buy into the rat race idea, I would never make enough money to survive and I would be homeless or I would be starving or all of these things that we're taught are that if you just pour all your energy into the corporation, we'll take care of you, which is also bullshit. And in my older age now, I can reject that is a worthwhile goal for me in my life. Not that I don't need money. Obviously I need money. I got to do some work, and I've worked that out for myself. I've figured out how to make that work for myself, and none of it includes working for a corporate.
Interestingly, our Gen Z kids also don't have a vision of working for corporate for several reasons. One, because they understand that it's not a two-way street. It is definitely the employee is expected to give everything. The employer can just let you go, whatever. Two, because they don't think even with they're in the rat race, they're not going to make enough money to live. And three, because they don't like that kind of authority over everything in their life when they're not getting something out of it that's worthwhile.
I think Gen Z is the first generation of working age people in late stage capitalism.
Yep, I agree.
I think they're the first generation that's going to have to live through the reality of the capitalism, the way that we have portrayed it, and the way that we've lived it out is not sustainable. It's not sustainable at this level. We can't just unendingly funnel money upward,
Right.
because at some point the people at the bottom have to eat. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see, because and I'm grateful that they had Gen X parents who learned how to reject the notion already so that we could teach them that this is not sustainable and give them tools to do it differently. So I have a great deal of hope in my children to rebuild society in a way that is sustainable and that is better for people, because we have enough resources on this planet so that everybody could eat, have shelter, have health care. We have the resources, we just haven't distributed them properly. And I think that this new generation is going to figure out how to do that.
It's not going to be easy, but I really believe in them, that they have a different vision of the world than we did. So I think they will at least start this change. Right, because I'm just thinking about that, infinitely funneling money up to what end? There's already enough at the top. I mean, there was already ridiculously enough at the top. So people will just die and they just force women to have more babies to create more workers? Is that the plan? Is that the capitalist plan?
That is the plan. That is the capitalist plan. And our kids' generation is not buying it.
They're not going to do that.
They're not buying it.
No.
So, I mean, I felt a lot of despair, honestly, in the last year and a half. And as time has moved on and I've done a little bit more digging, I'm feeling more hope than I am feeling despair, because we were living in the end stages where we still thought that it was viable.
But we didn't even occur to us whether it was.
We still poured our money and our energy and our resources and our time and our allegiance to corporate. And now that we've burst through that bubble, our kids can do it different.
They will. They will.
It's going to be hard. It's going to be really, really hard. Yeah, and I guess I'm just thinking back to the earlier conversations that we were having about kind of living into a slower pace of life. There was a time when I would have felt very guilty about living a slower pace of life because there's so much work to be done. And as I'm looking at multiple generations that are behind me now, I think it's okay to let some of that go to the young people. Right? Like, I think part of the problem that we had politically is that the boomer generation just wouldn't fucking let go.
Won't. No,
and they're
wouldn't.
Still living as if the world is 1950, and it just isn't. And I feel like if they could once they die off, and if our generation continues to sort of hand off not just the work but also the wisdom that we have, so that they can bring their wisdom and the work together and build something different, I feel so much more hopeful about that. And I don't feel an ounce of guilt about letting things go that are beyond my control to control. Like I have no guilt about living a little bit slower. I have no guilt about stepping out of the rat race, because I'm in the place in life right now where my surviving and my thriving is also good for other people too. So it's not completely self-centered slowness, groundedness, peacefulness. Um, it's really well balanced, I think. I feel like my 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 input and my output are really well balanced right now.
I think it's even deeper than balance. I think it's just the natural order of things that I can't do what I used to do in my 30s. I can't go
Yeah.
travel to 3 different cities in 1 week. I would be exhausted if I did that. So yet last night I was trying to get a measuring cup from the back of the top cabinet, and I have a frozen shoulder and I couldn't reach it. And so I said, "Hey, come here and get this for me." And you know what he did? He came over and he got it for me. Like, this is the natural order of things. I couldn't reach. He had no issue. Mom, you're not being productive. You're not trying. You're not, nothing. I'm nothing like
No.
that. It was just, oh, okay, I can do that. And you can't. I'll do it. And I think that's in the bigger picture, this is where we are in life, is that we're not going to do those physical things anymore. We're not going to work those 60, 70-hour weeks in the office with pantyhose and high heels, because we're just not built for that anymore. We're built for the wisdom and the guidance and sharing what works and what doesn't work, and also creating room and removing obstacles for our kids to do things that we've never even thought of doing.
Yeah, I love what you just said about that our role now maybe not to be as physically active, but we have wisdom to share.
Right.
And so maybe our role is shifting away from that productivity and that being in the world very productive and active, and stepping back and saying y'all can do some of the work, and we've got some wisdom to share about things that we tried that didn't work, things that we've tried that did work, and then also the wisdom to pass that on and then let it go. Like
Right.
what they do with the wisdom we share is up to them.
Because they know things, they are going to find out things about the world that we never knew. And
Yeah,
that's
we
the way
don't
it
know
should work.
everything.
Right.
We don't know everything.
Exactly.
So I think part of what I came to this conversation with initially was this idea that we, because of this natural progression where things are moving a little bit slower and our role is going to change, we can fight it and try to exist as we always did, or we can embrace it. And I'm not saying, yeah, I give up. I'm not talking about giving up. I'm not talking about conceding. I'm talking about embracing this new way of being in a way that I could not have done 20 or 30 years ago because of all the things we've talked about. I'm going to choose to embrace this new way of living because it's working really well for me. And I really hope that specifically other women in our generation and men, are not beating themselves up too hard for the things that they are no longer doing, because we're not useless. We're just doing things really differently now.
I think it's up to us as a generation to embrace this, because I would argue the boomers have not embraced this, particularly boomers who are in political positions have not embraced this fact of your role is going to change. You're now an advisor and you're an elder and you're a person to give advice and counsel. You're not the person to still do all the stuff. If you can't stay awake through a meeting, you're not the person who should be running that meeting. Give advice to people who are going to go do that meeting, get out of the way. And I think we have the courage as a generation to get out of the way, to leave all of the wisdom and leave all the good stuff that we can, and then get out of the way.
That is why Gen X is the best. We've figured out how not to hang on to it too long like a boomer, and how not to just give up. Like, I love our generation. I love this time of life. I love my 50s. Love being in my 50s. There's just so much. There's so much that's a gift that I could not have appreciated when I was 20 or 30 or even 40.
I suggest we bring it home with a tribute to Gen X. We are bitchin'. We are bad. We are awesome. We're
Radical,
radical. We are
tubular.
so tubular. Coming soon on Super Random Things with those sisters. So I had a baby late in life, and I'm so, so glad that I did. I really wanted this child. So when I was pregnant with him, I had just gotten a new car as well, and the new car came with what they called at the time run flat tires, which means if you got a hole, the tire still ran. And there was lore out there that said these new run flat tires would sometimes make people feel carsick. And I was getting carsick constantly. And it could be the pregnancy, it could be the run flat tires, I didn't know. But every ride home from work, I was just carsick. And so I had tons of ultrasounds on this baby and everything was fine. And then I had the baby. And then the first year of his life, I was popping Tums left and right because I just felt sick all the time. And about 18 months into his life, I started seeking medical care for this condition because I was throwing up a lot and I didn't feel well and my stomach was gurgling constantly. And I went to see my family care practitioner, who was a woman who I liked. And she said, let's not jump to anything scary. You have adult onset lactose intolerance. And I said, oh, okay, well, let's give that a try. I don't think so, but let's give that a try. And so for a while there, I just stopped eating lactose, but I also stopped eating anything because anything that I ate made me feel so sick. So my son's getting older. And then about a week or two after his birthday, my boss had a birthday party and she had this amazing buttercream cake. And so I thought, I haven't eaten anything. I'm starved. It looks like a good cake. I adore her. I ate the cake and I was just so, so, so sick. So I spent the whole night just not feeling well at all. About 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, I can't wait anymore. So I woke up the nanny and I drove myself to the hospital. It was a weird time of the year where there were so many people in the emergency room at that hour that I was sitting in the hallway for hours and hours and hours, just sitting in a bed in the hallway. So then the doctor came up to me and he said exactly what I knew he was going to say. And he said, you have a blockage of your intestine and it's unlikely to be benign. And I knew he was going to say that. But all of a sudden I was in this huge trench and the walls above me were just this sort of slippery cliff. And I knew I was never going to be able to climb out of that. I was just in this trench, and those words, it's unlikely to be benign, were just bouncing off the walls left and right. And I heard it over and over and over again, sitting in that hallway. And so they rushed me over to surgery, took the blockage out, and then they diagnosed me with a stage 4 colon cancer. Hey, Aslo, do you like your mom's content?
I do. Do you like it, Kiwi?
I really do. I like my mom's content.
It's amazing.
Hey, you can subscribe, please.
Like and subscribe.